I walked into my sister's engagement like an underestimated nobody, and left holding $12 million. The laughter reached me before I reached the table. Not warm laughter. Not joy. The kind that slides across your skin like silk and then cuts when you realize it's aimed at you. I stepped into the private dining room and saw my older brother, Elliot Grayson, standing in the center of the room like the night had been built around him. Candlelight caught the edge of his new engagement ring every time he lifted his hand, and he lifted it often, not by accident, not unconsciously, but carefully, as if the ring itself deserved an audience. My father noticed me first. Noticed, then smiled. That polite smile he used when greeting clients, strangers, or people he didn't quite respect. "There he is," he said loudly. "Our late starter." A few relatives laughed. Not cruelly. Not openly. The kind of laughter that pretends to be harmless. I kept my expression still and walked toward the table. Except my place wasn't at the center. It was at the very end, beside the swinging kitchen door, where waiters brushed past and trays clinked too close to my shoulder. A seat placed carefully out of the way. A seat that said, "You're here, but you don't matter." I didn't protest. Didn't ask questions. I pulled out the chair and sat down as if it had been my choice. When your family does this long enough, you learn something early: if you react, they win twice. My name is Rowan Hale. I'm 27, and in my family that age means one of two things. You're either successful, or you're the example. Elliot was the golden one. Top schools. Perfect internships. Perfect friends. A life that looked like it had been edited before it happened. Me? I was the wrong turn. The son who used to be bright before he became too sensitive. The one whose life never quite followed the plan my parents had designed in quiet conversations behind closed doors. Tonight was Elliot's engagement dinner. Crystal glasses. Linen napkins. Menus printed on thick paper that smelled faintly of ink and money. The room looked like celebration. But I hadn't been invited to celebrate. I'd been invited to witness. My aunt leaned toward my cousin, not bothering to lower her voice. "He's still doing that little internet project, right?" My cousin smirked. "You mean the company he won't stop talking about?" I lifted my glass and took a slow sip of water. Across from Elliot sat his fiancée, Marianne Calder, elegant, composed, the kind of woman who knew how to hold silence like jewelry. She smiled politely at everyone, nodded at stories, played the role perfectly. My father stood and raised his glass. "Tonight is about Elliot," he said warmly. "Focused. Disciplined. Never distracted by foolish dreams." Then his eyes slid to me. "And that's why he's the one we can rely on." Soft laughter again. Quiet. Precise. Elliot tilted his head, pretending modesty. "Dad, stop," he said gently, then looked directly at me. "Rowan," he asked sweetly, "tell everyone what you've been doing lately." There it was. The spotlight. The trap disguised as interest. I stared at my plate for half a second. I could have lied. Could have made it easier for them. Could have said I was still figuring things out. But I didn't. "I've been working," I said calmly. Elliot blinked. "Working where?" "My company." My mother laughed softly, as if I'd told a harmless joke. "A company?" she repeated. "Rowan, be realistic." My father sighed, disappointed before I'd finished speaking. "Elliot is building a future," he said. "A real one." Elliot smiled, gentle and sharp at the same time. "It's okay if you're behind," he said. "Some people just move slower." Behind. That word pressed against my ribs like a weight. I folded my hands so no one would see them tighten. Then something shifted. Marianne wasn't looking at Elliot anymore. She was looking at me. Not curious. Recognizing. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if a memory had just surfaced in the back of her mind. She leaned closer, careful, quiet. "Rowan Hale," she murmured. "Are you?" Elliot's smile froze. My father's fork stopped in midair. The room leaned forward without realizing it. Marianne swallowed. "Are you the founder of Haleworth Systems?" Silence fell so fast it felt physical. I didn't answer right away. I let it sit there. Let them feel the same uncertainty I had swallowed for years. Then I lifted my eyes to my brother. "Yes," I said softly. "That's me." The table stopped breathing. Elliot's smile cracked, just a hairline fracture, enough for panic to show. That's ridiculous, he said quickly. Marianne, you're confused. Rowan always had big ideas. Big ideas. The phrase he used when he meant fantasies. Marianne didn't laugh. She leaned back slowly, studying me as pieces fell into place. No, she said quietly. I'm not confused. My father cleared his throat. Marianne, dear, maybe this isn't the moment. I think it is, she replied. Then she turned back to me. We reviewed Haleworth last quarter, she said. For acquisition. My mother stared at her. Reviewed for what? For a possible buyout. Elliot stood so fast his chair scraped loudly. Stop, he snapped. Why are you doing this? I rose too, not to confront him, but simply to stand. I didn't come here to say anything, I said gently. I came because this was your night. Elliot's eyes burned. So this is revenge? No, I replied. This is just the truth arriving late. Marianne looked at him slowly. You told me Rowan was failing, she said. I said he was still finding himself, Elliot whispered. I am, I said calmly. Just not in the way you wanted. My father rubbed his temples. How much is this company worth? He asked quietly. There it was. The only question that ever mattered. I'm not selling, I said. But the last valuation was in the 8-figure range. The silence that followed was different. No laughter. No mockery. Just shock. And for the first time in my life. No one looked at me like I was behind. No one spoke for several seconds after I said the number. 8 figures. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from politeness. It was the kind that happens when the world you believed in shifts slightly off its axis and your body hasn't caught up yet. My mother was the first to move. She lowered her glass carefully, as if sudden motion might shatter something invisible. That can't be right, she said. It is, Marianne replied quietly. We reviewed their projections ourselves. My father stared at me as if I had just appeared at the table instead of sitting there the whole evening. You never said anything, he finally whispered. I tried, I answered. You told me to stop dreaming. That landed harder than anything else. Elliot looked like he'd swallowed glass. You let us think you were struggling, he said hoarsely. No, I replied. You wanted to think that. His jaw tightened. For years, Elliot had lived comfortably inside the idea that he was ahead of me. That belief had shaped every joke, every comment, every subtle correction offered in front of relatives and friends. And now it was slipping through his fingers. Marianne folded her hands on the table, thoughtful. This explains a lot, she murmured. Elliot turned on her. What does that mean? She hesitated, then chose honesty. When I asked why you insisted on a prenup clause limiting shared assets, she said carefully, you told me it was just practical. My mother gasped. But now, Marianne continued, I'm realizing you were afraid of something else. Elliot's voice rose, sharp. That's not fair. Were you afraid, she asked gently, that if Rowan married or partnered before you, his assets would complicate your financial plans? The question hung there. My father's face drained of color. Elliot, my mother whispered. Elliot stood rigid, eyes darting between us. I was being careful, he said. Rowan has always tried to compete with me. I shook my head slowly. I wasn't competing, I said. I was surviving. Marianne rose from her chair. I think we should pause the engagement dinner, she said quietly. The word pause hit harder than any accusation. You can't be serious, Elliot whispered. I am, she replied. There are things I need to understand before I move forward. The room watched her like she had just turned off gravity. I reached for my jacket. Rowan, my mother said softly, you're leaving. I didn't come to take anything from Elliot, I said. I just needed you all to stop taking things from me. At the door, Marianne stopped me. For what it's worth, she said, I respect what you built. Thank you, I replied. Outside, the night felt different. Cool. Quiet. Honest. I walked to my car without looking back. Halfway down the block, my phone vibrated. Marcus, COO deal confirmed. Expansion approved. Congratulations. I smiled. Behind me, an engagement dinner was falling apart. Ahead of me, a life that finally belonged to me. I didn't go home. I drove. No music. No destination. Just the road and the strange lightness in my chest, not joy, not triumph. Relief. By the time the city blurred into ribbons of yellow and white, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls. Messages. Names I hadn't heard from in years. I ignored them. The first message I opened was from my mother. "We're proud of you. Why didn't you tell us?" I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because it was familiar. The second was from my father. "We didn't understand. We were wrong." They had always understood enough to judge. Just not enough to listen. At my apartment garage, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and breathed. The old version of me would have driven back. Would have tried to fix it. Smooth it. Protect everyone else from discomfort. But comfort had always come at my expense. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the floor. Not because I was broken. Because for the first time, I didn't have to stand tall for anyone. My phone buzzed again. "Elliot." I hesitated. Then answered. "What do you want?" he demanded before I could speak. "I want peace," I said. He laughed bitterly. "You humiliated me. I didn't say anything you didn't force me to say." Silence. Then quieter. "You let me believe I was better than you." I closed my eyes. "No," I said gently. "You needed to believe that. You could have warned me about Marianne." "I didn't even know her," I replied. "And I'm not responsible for how you treat people." His voice cracked. "Everything was perfect before tonight." "For you," I said. "It never was for me." He hung up. I didn't feel victory. I felt finality. The next morning, my assistant called before sunrise. "The news moved fast," she said. 3 partnership requests overnight. "Anne. Marianne emailed you." I paused. "About what?" "She's stepping back from the engagement. She wants to talk professionally." I exhaled slowly. "Wish her well," I said. "Business goes through legal." By noon, my name was everywhere that mattered. Not gossip. Not family group chats. Industry boards. Strategy calls. Decision rooms. That afternoon, I walked into our office and for the first time. I wasn't proving anything. I was leading. By the end of that week, my life no longer felt like something I was chasing. It felt like something I was finally standing inside. The office had become quieter in a good way. Not empty, just focused. People spoke with intention. Meetings ended with decisions instead of doubt. For the first time, no one looked at me like I was trying to prove I belonged in the room. They already knew. Late Thursday evening, as I was reviewing expansion contracts, my assistant knocked softly on my office door. "There's someone downstairs," she said. "Didn't have an appointment. But I think you'll want to see them." I knew before she said the name. Elliot. He stood in the lobby like a stranger who had wandered into the wrong building. No tailored jacket. No practiced smile. Just a man who had lost the map he'd been using his entire life. When he saw me, relief crossed his face, then something darker. Fear. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. We went to the conference room. Glass walls. Open lights. Nothing to hide behind. He didn't sit at first. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. "That's new," I replied gently. He winced. "I ruined everything," he said. I waited. For once, I didn't rush to save him from his own silence. "Marianne called it off," he continued. "Not just the engagement. Everything. She said she doesn't trust who I become when I'm afraid." I nodded. "She's not wrong." He finally Saturday, I thought, if I stayed ahead of you, everything would make sense, he whispered. Our whole lives, they told me I was the example. That I had to win. That if I slowed down, I'd disappear. I studied him. This wasn't the confident sibling from the dinner table. This was someone who had built his identity on comparison, and just lost the mirror. "You didn't need to beat me," I said quietly. "You just needed to stop pushing me under." He covered his face with his hands. "I'm not a bad person," he said. "I know," I replied. "But you made bad choices." Silence settled. Then he looked up. "They're furious with you." "Of course they are. They said you embarrassed the family." I almost smiled. "They embarrassed themselves." He hesitated. "They want you to come to dinner Sunday." That surprised me. Just dinner, he added quickly. No speeches. No relatives. Just us. I considered it. Not for them. For myself. All right, I said. But I'm not apologizing for existing. He nodded. I wouldn't ask you to. Sunday arrived quietly. No catered meal. No polished silver. Just a small dining table that suddenly felt unfamiliar without an audience. They looked different without performance. Smaller. My parents stood when I entered. I'm glad you came, they said. I'm here, I replied. That's all I promised. We sat. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the words came out wrong. We were afraid, my other parent said finally. Of what? That you'd fail. I nodded. I did fail, I said. Many times. You just weren't there when I stood back up. Tears filled their eyes. We didn't see you, they whispered. That was the problem, I replied gently. You were always looking at someone else. Elliot stared at his plate. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. I know, I said. But intent doesn't erase damage. They nodded. And for the first time in my life. They didn't argue. They listened. That mattered more than any apology. When I stood to leave, my parents stopped me at the door. You don't owe us anything, they said softly. But, we're proud of you. I searched their face. Not for approval. For honesty. This time, it was there. The following months unfolded differently. No chaos. No revenge. Just momentum. Our expansion closed ahead of schedule. 2 new partners came on board. One morning, I walked into a boardroom and realized something strange. No one in the room knew my family. They only knew my work. And they respected it. At a regional summit, I was asked to speak about quiet leadership. About building without applause. About being underestimated. When the applause came, it wasn't loud. It was warm. Afterward, a woman approached me. I thought I was behind in life, she said. Until I heard you. I smiled. You're not behind, I said. You're just early in your own story. One evening, weeks later, Elliot called again. This time, his voice wasn't sharp. It was steady. I started therapy, he said. That's good. I'm learning how much of my life was competition. That takes courage. He hesitated. I'm sorry. Not rushed. Not defensive. Just honest. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. By the time winter arrived, the noise had faded. No whispers. No comparisons. At the next family gathering, my seat was at the center table. But I didn't need it. Because power had already moved. Quietly. Permanently. The winter sunlight slanted across the downtown office floor, highlighting the glass walls of Pierce & Company. The reflection wasn't just light, it was the echo of the life I had built in secret, the one I had quietly fought for while the world assumed I was invisible. 3 months had passed since the engagement dinner. My company had grown faster than even I expected. 2 acquisitions, several new clients, and contracts overseas. The quiet victories were mine alone, but they carried a weight no applause could ever match. The phone rang just as I was reviewing the quarterly expansion reports. I recognized the number immediately, my father. I hesitated. Then answered. Kendall, he said, voice careful. No arrogance, no amusement. Can we meet? Sure, I replied, calm. For what purpose? To talk. I let that hang. For the first time in years, the conversation was mine to frame. We met in a small cafe, away from the press, away from the eyes that had always judged. He arrived with that practiced smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. I wanted to understand, he said. Not just about the company. About everything. About why you did what you did. I sipped my coffee. I survived what I had to survive. I built what I could. I never needed approval, just space to do it. His hands trembled slightly. I see that now. I don't understand it fully, but I see it. You never tried before, I said softly. You were too busy comparing, measuring, laughing at my mistakes. You didn't see me because it didn't fit your story. He lowered his gaze. I ruined a lot of things, but you made it. And you did it without anyone noticing. I studied him. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving who was stronger. It was about recognition, finally earned, finally real. I'm proud of you, he said. Simple. Genuine. I felt no rush to return the sentiment. Not because I wasn't capable, but because it had taken years for it to matter. Thank you, I said. And that was enough. Back at the office, things had shifted. Colleagues no longer saw me as quiet, timid, or uncertain. They saw the founder, the strategist, the woman who could quietly dismantle a fraudulent empire without a public fight. A new client had flown in from Europe for a negotiation. As I walked into the boardroom, I realized they weren't here for showmanship. They were here for results. And I delivered. Every clause, every negotiation, every subtle leverage I had learned from years of watching my family unfold their dramas, it all mattered now. Every humiliation I had endured, every dismissive comment, every smirk, it had built my instinct, my intuition, my ability to move without leaving openings. By the end of the day, we had closed a deal that would double our company's valuation. No one clapped. No one cheered. Just satisfied, deliberate nods. I liked it that way. That evening, Elliot stopped by the office. Not the panicked, entitled brother from the dinner, not the man who had laughed at my struggles. This was a different person. Humble. Careful. Stripped of pretense. I've started sorting my mistakes, he said. I need to rebuild too. And I wanted to apologize. I've heard that before, I said gently. But it's different now. You're doing it without an audience. That's the point. He nodded. I know. It's just difficult. Seeing you, knowing I underestimated you for years. You underestimated yourself more, I said. You built your identity around others, not yourself. He exhaled slowly. I think I finally see that. I don't need to compete with you anymore. Good, I said. Because I'm not here to compete anymore. I'm here to live. The next family gathering was inevitable. The holiday party. Normally, it would have been tense, performative, suffocating. This time, I walked in confident. Not proud, not loud. Just confident. Seats were arranged. Guests whispered. My parents tried their usual games. But the difference this time? I wasn't the girl at the end of the table. I was the center. Not because they gave it to me, but because it was mine to claim. Every nod, every glance, they had to acknowledge it, even if silently. Delaney approached me with a forced smile. Congratulations on the growth, she said. Thank you, I replied evenly. It's been steady. She hesitated, then lowered her eyes. I didn't see it coming. I know, I said. I never wanted you to. This wasn't a race. Grant, her fiancé, now observing more closely than before, gave a respectful nod. No comments. No whispers. Just acknowledgement. The party went on, but the undercurrent had shifted. The power was quiet, permanent. My family had to adjust. They had no choice. And I realized something vital: justice wasn't loud. Revenge wasn't necessary. Patience and strategy, combined with skill, were more powerful than any anger-fueled confrontation. By the year's end, Pierce & Company expanded to a new city. Our work culture was respected, our reputation solidified. Invitations came not because of family name, not because of old money, but because of actual results. I walked into the new office and paused by the window, watching the skyline light up. For the first time in my life, the horizon felt mine. No shadows. No whispers. No comparisons. Just the quiet, undeniable truth: I had built everything I deserved. And nothing, neither family nor circumstance, could take it from me. The next morning, Kendall woke to the quiet hum of her new life. No alarms, no interruptions, just the soft sunlight spilling into her apartment. She made coffee, watched the steam rise, and felt an unfamiliar ease. The world didn't demand she perform. The world didn't define her by someone else's judgment. Her phone buzzed. It was her assistant, short and precise. Meeting with Grant Holloway confirmed. 10 a.m. Conference room B. Grant. The same man who had seen her for what she truly was at the engagement dinner, who had recognized her potential when her family couldn't. She wasn't anxious, not anymore. She had clarity, and clarity had weight. By mid-morning, Kendall walked into the office's sleek conference room. Grant was already there, reviewing a tablet. He looked up, smiled faintly, but there was respect in his gaze. "Kendall," he began, "I want to be sure we start fresh. No family drama, no assumptions. I want to discuss a professional partnership." She nodded. "That's all I want too. Straightforward, mutual, effective." He handed her a folder with projections, contracts, and growth strategies. "Pierce & Company has impressive traction," he said. "But there's more we can achieve together. Global reach, logistics efficiency, and data integration. I think we could triple your current scope within 2 years." She scanned the documents. Every detail was sharp, actionable, realistic. She nodded slowly. "I like it. Let's proceed. But transparency. No hidden clauses, no assumptions. Everything on the table." He leaned back. "Agreed. I've been in boardrooms where things aren't as clear. Not here." The air shifted in the room. It wasn't tension, nor ego, it was mutual understanding. Two people, both ambitious, both competent, both ready to execute without letting pride interfere. Later that afternoon, her mother appeared at her office. Not unannounced, not invasive, just soft, quiet, tentative. "Kendall," she said. Her eyes were warmer than Kendall had remembered in years. "Can we talk?" "Of course," Kendall replied, gesturing to the seating area. Mom sat, hesitated, then spoke. "I misjudged you for years. I thought being strict, controlling, that was care. It wasn't. It was fear and ego. I see now how capable you are, how steady, how brilliant. I don't want to fix the past. I just want to recognize the present." Kendall studied her. The voice wasn't defensive, the words weren't excuses. They were acknowledgement. That was what mattered. "Thank you," she said. "Acknowledgement is enough. Respect matters more than approval." Her mother nodded. A long, quiet moment passed. No interruptions, no judgment. Just recognition and acceptance. The following week, Delaney reached out again. This time, the tone was different, softer, less competitive, almost vulnerable. "Kendall, can we talk?" "Of course," Kendall replied. Delaney took a deep breath. "I see now what I didn't before. I thought this was a game of competition, but you weren't competing. You were building. And I let my insecurities blind me. I want to apologize for everything, the mocking, the comments, the assumptions. I was wrong." Kendall felt a weight lift. Not because she needed the apology, but because it was sincere. "I accept it," she said gently. "And I hope you can learn to build too, not just measure yourself against someone else." Delaney nodded slowly. "I will. I need to." For the first time in years, there was no tension, no hidden edge, no game. They could finally see each other as equals, not adversaries. Months passed. Pierce & Company expanded internationally. Kendall traveled, negotiated, and mentored her team. The company wasn't just a business, it was a statement of resilience, strategy, and quiet strength. One evening, she stood at her office balcony, overlooking the city. The light stretched like a river of possibility. Her phone buzzed, her parents, Delaney, Grant, even distant colleagues. Messages of acknowledgement, respect, and congratulations. She smiled, not because of praise, but because she had arrived at a life that belonged to her. The girl who had sat at the end of the family table, ignored and belittled, had built a reality no one could dismiss. And yet, the most satisfying moment came quietly. Kendall returned home one night to find her father sitting in the living room, unusually calm, unassuming. "Kendall," he said softly. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say I respect what you've done. You've shown strength I never acknowledged." She nodded. "Respect is enough. I don't need more. And I've learned that true strength is patience, strategy, and vision, not control or intimidation." He looked down, thoughtful. "I see that now. I lost too much trying to control. Maybe this is how I start over." Kendall smiled faintly. Not victory. Not satisfaction from revenge. Just understanding, closure, and the finality of measured justice. She had won not by hurting anyone, but by surviving, strategizing, and claiming her space. Her family had no choice but to recognize it. And she had no need to prove it further. The following morning, Kendall woke to the quiet rhythm of her apartment. No alarms, no demands, just the gentle hum of the city outside. She poured herself coffee, the aroma grounding her in the reality she had built. The life she had fought for, brick by brick, was finally hers. Her phone buzzed with messages, Grant Holloway, her COO, even Delaney. But she ignored them for a moment, savoring the stillness. She had earned this space. She didn't need approval, applause, or anyone's validation. Just the knowledge that she had reclaimed control over her story. By mid-morning, Kendall was at Pierce & Company headquarters. The office had grown exponentially in the past months, yet the spirit remained the same, focused, resilient, and uncompromising. She walked through the open concept space, nodding at her team who were deep in strategy sessions, laughing over coffee, and reviewing logistics software. At her desk, she paused and looked out over the city skyline. For years, her family had tried to define her by what they thought she should be: quiet, submissive, insignificant. Now, the world was watching her build, lead, and command, not because they approved, but because she was capable. Grant Holloway arrived shortly after. "Morning," he said, professional yet friendly. "I wanted to go over the international expansion projections with you." Kendall handed him the updated reports. "Everything's set. The first phase is ready to launch next week." He studied the documents, impressed. "You've exceeded expectations. Honestly, this growth isn't just numbers, it's strategy, vision, and execution. You've built something extraordinary." Kendall smiled, but it wasn't pride for pride's sake. It was the quiet acknowledgement that her diligence, patience, and intelligence had created a reality no one could undermine. Later that afternoon, her parents came to visit, not as critics, not as judges, but as people who had begun to understand the woman she had become. "Kendall," her mother said, voice gentle, almost hesitant. I wanted to acknowledge what you've built. We didn't see it before, but we see it now. And I'm sorry for how we treated you." Kendall regarded her quietly. "Acknowledgement is enough. Respect matters more than apologies." Her father nodded. "We let control and pride get in the way of understanding you. That ends now. I respect your strength, your vision, and your resilience." It wasn't triumph over them. It was reconciliation on her terms. She had won not by proving them wrong, but by proving herself right, to herself. A week later, Delaney called. This time, her tone was measured, sincere. "Kendall. I've been thinking about everything. I owe you an apology. I judged, I mocked, and I underestimated you. I was wrong." Kendall considered the words. "I accept it. And I hope you learn that building your own path is more important than measuring yourself against others." There was silence on the line, then a soft exhale. "I will. I want to." Kendall hung up, a rare smile tugging at her lips. The bridge between them wasn't built on revenge, it was built on truth, clarity, and mutual respect. Months passed. Pierce & Company launched international operations, expanded their logistics software platform, and established partnerships with global shipping leaders. Kendall traveled, negotiated, and mentored her team. Every project, every decision reflected the woman she had become, composed, strategic, and unwavering. At night, she often returned to her balcony, looking over the city lights. They stretched endlessly, a ribbon of possibility that mirrored the journey she had taken. Once, the same city had felt suffocating, full of judgment, expectations, and comparison. Now, it felt expansive, alive, and hers to navigate. The most profound moment came quietly, one evening at her family's small holiday gathering. No cameras, no audience, just presence. Her parents, Delaney, and a few relatives gathered around the dining table, conversation easy, laughter unforced. Her father met her gaze. "I was wrong to doubt you," he said softly. "You've built a life, a company, and a legacy I can't help but admire." Her mother added, "And I was wrong to prioritize control over understanding. I see you now, fully." Delaney reached across and touched her hand. "I didn't realize what I had dismissed. I'm proud of you, Kendall. Truly." For the first time, Kendall didn't feel the need to correct, defend, or assert dominance. She simply let the acknowledgement settle around her. No victory cries, no dramatic gestures, just the quiet affirmation that she had survived, endured, and triumphed. Weeks later, Pierce & Company hosted a charity tech summit. Kendall stepped onto the stage to speak. She didn't tell her story as a tale of revenge, but as a lesson in resilience, patience, and vision. The audience listened, captivated not by drama, but by truth. After the event, her parents and Delaney approached her. No prideful posturing, no judgments. Just respect, genuine admiration, and connection. Driving home that night, Kendall reflected on the girl she had once been, quiet, overlooked, underestimated. That girl wasn't weak. She was patient, strategic, and resilient. She had learned the power of building in the shadows, waiting for the right moment, and claiming what was always hers by merit, not by inheritance or permission. Parking in her driveway, Kendall stepped out into the cool night air, breathed deeply, and smiled. The road ahead was wide open, unburdened, and entirely her own. Peace, she realized, didn't arrive with loud triumphs. It arrived quietly, through control reclaimed, respect earned, and freedom claimed. And for the first time, Kendall Pierce felt truly, fully free.